Welcome to the County Board of Commissioners, June 7th regular meeting. We'd like to start with the invitation from Commissioner Bryant of the President State.
Father God, we say thank you for the beautiful day you give. Father, we thank you for every household that's represented here this evening. Father, just continue to lead, guide, and direct us in the decisions that we make with the Father, we ask that you continue to protect those who serve, whether it be here. Pray in your most glorious name.
Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Use your phones and watches and various other sundry electronics. All right, roll call, Ms. Bishop.
All commissioners are present.
Great. I believe we have some agenda amendments. Mr. Brown, are you doing? Mr. Casey? What are y'all? Farmers.
We need to make an amendment to discuss violence with the PSA.
All right. All those in favor? We'll just make that item number 10. Yes. All right, at this point, can I get a motion to adopt the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second. All right, all those in favor? Motion carries, thank you. All right, this time, we had the opportunity to read your minutes of the regular meeting and hearing on May 17th. Are there any corrections, additions, deletions, or whatever? Gonna get a motion otherwise.
Make a motion to approve the minutes, May 17th, budget hearing.
We have a first and second, all those in favor? Motion carries. All right, this time we've had some presentations. Who's doing those, Kate?
I am
All
the,
right,
we have a proclamation tonight recognizing the week of June 12th through the 18th as National Waste and Recycling Workers Week. Whereas the nation celebrates the week of June 12th through the 18th as National Waste and Recycling Workers Week. Whereas the men and women employed by the Camden County Solid Waste Authority make significant contributions to the safety, health, and welfare of our citizens by processing thousands of tons of garbage, recycling, and composting annually. Solid waste workers provide an essential service to enable the proper collection, processing, and disposal of solid waste. Waste disposal is vital for maintaining a healthy community by preventing the spread of disease, keeping our communities clean and beautiful, and providing an environmentally safe disposal for our residents, businesses, and industries. Solid waste workers complete their daily routine through difficult conditions like odors, weather, mud, dust, and extreme heat, with little recognition for their dedication. Solid waste workers continue to work nonstop through COVID-19 pandemic without closing the landfills. Solid waste workers provide proper disposal of solid waste in an engineered, sustainable location for the benefit of Camden County and its cities. Camden County values and celebrates all of the solid waste workers employed to serve our residents, businesses, and industries. The Camden County Board of Commissioners values and celebrates our local sanitation, solid waste industry employees for the commitment to our residents, businesses, and communities. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Commissioners do hereby proclaim the week of June 12th through the 18th as Solid Waste and Recycling Workers Week, and encourage all citizens to join in thanking the hardworking men and women who ensure our communities are kept safe, clean, and healthy.
all right.
And I believe we're going to get a picture, if you could come down. And I think, if you want to say a few words first.
Until the Mr. Chair.
You are more than welcome to say some words.
Well, good evening, Commissioners, and thank you for recognizing us this week. It's sponsored by SWANA, our Solid Waste Associations. This goal for celebrating all the solid waste workers. We also would celebrate the collection side of things, if we're in the collection business. But we are in just the disposal business here in Camden County. But just wanted to let you know that our employees are good, hardworking employees that show up every day. They show up on the days I don't even want to be there, you know. Today was one of them. It was muddy, it was wet, and it was hot and humid and stinky too, so. But they show up and they work hard every day, and they show that what they do and what they do for the county and all the cities in Camden County, and the grades they get on their inspections, so. I want to thank them, and I want to thank you all for helping us, and thank them. So, and with that, I give you one of these flyers to pass, and I also we'd like to.
All right, do you have a thing down there? Fine, come on.
Yeah.
All right. Bring it all up here and show it up. There you go.
All right, there we go.
All right. Yeah, here's goes in that conversation. You hope for understand. We do appreciate y'all. I think work hard at it. Thank you. Is, it's not those glamorous, but it's obviously very essential.
Yes, it's honest.
That's true. All right, I believe we have John. Are you gonna be part of the, presentation, or is it just gonna be Mr. Blake Swafford?
Mr. Blaze Spofford.
All right, you're up, sir. You're gonna do us a presentation on the, airport financial analysis.
Is this microphone?
Yes, it's on.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you for your time. Appreciate you having me. Again, Blake Swafford with Hanson Professional Services. We're a engineering firm that does airport work all across the United States as well as other parts of the world. We've been doing airport work for over 50 years. Personally, I've been doing airport work for about 28 years. So we've got a long, extensive background in this type of stuff. So wanted to come and just share with you some of the results of the financial plan that we recently completed and submitted to Georgia DOT. I think you all are aware. Thank you. Need my glasses for that. I think you all are aware that the Georgia DOT had requested this financial study. Well, as soon as I figure this gizmo out, we'll get started.
Sure, the correct button here.
Oh, there it goes. All right.
Tell them I'm bringing it up.
She just needed to get up one more time to make it work. That was all. Yep, there we go. All right. So the financial plan included a number of different chapters, and we're going to skim over some of them because it's kind of background information, and all of you are aware of the background information. So there's not a lot of reason to go into a lot of that level of detail. But in the introduction section, the one thing we'll cover today is the 8 steps to build an airport, which is something that's published by the Georgia DOT. That's not something we came up with. It's actually the Georgia DOT's document, but we'll talk about those steps and kind of where you all are at in that and what would be next. Then we'll take a look at what's called the National Plan of Integrated Airport Systems. The acronym there is NEPIAS. And that is an FAA designation which allows you to receive federal grants for work on an airport. So obviously that's something that would be very, very important to you as you move forward. Then we'll talk just a little bit about the management and operations analysis that we've done in the report. Won't go into a lot of detail there because that's something that really decisions don't need to be made real soon. And on that, those can be put off until later. And then the financial plan and budget forecast, that last section, that's really where the meat and potatoes of everything's at. That's where we've done the capital cost analysis for the construction of the airport, as well as the operational cost, and taking a look at some of the financing mechanisms for that. So we'll just jump right in here. So here's the 8 steps, and again, this is a GDOT publication. And they talk about, one, determining an airport sponsor. Obviously, you guys have already taken that step. You've already decided that you're going to be the airport sponsor, so there's a check mark there. So that's done. Don't have to worry about that. Number 2 is the feasibility study, and that was really part of the Georgia DOT's system plan that they did a few years ago. So currently, the proposed new airport is included in the Georgia State Airport System Plan. So that step has really been taken care of as well. So we've got a check mark there. Number 3 is Georgia State Airport System Plan, which I just mentioned. It's already in there, so we don't have to worry about that. And that NEPIAS, which I just mentioned a second ago. I'm going to skip over that one and talk about it in the next slide. Next is a site selection study. I'm sure that all of you are aware there was an original site selection study done all the way back in 2005. It was updated in 2017, and there is a need to take a look at a few more sites because there were some things that were kind of omitted in 2017, and we'd like to revisit that before final selection is made. Moving on, number 5 is the facility planning, which is your airport layout plan. And the airport layout plan is really just a graphical documentation of what you intend to build and how you intend to build it. 6, local government planning. That just basically is taking that airport layout plan and including it in your local comprehensive land use plan, so that you're protecting the area around the airport and protecting the airspace around the airport. And then you have the environmental assessment, which is obviously a requirement of the state as well as a requirement of the federal government for a project of this type. And then the airport development itself, which is, of course, the design and construction. Now, one thing I'll say about these 8 steps is why GDOT put them in the order they did is a little bit confusing to me, because you wouldn't wait until you got all the way through to the end to do the environmental assessment. That's actually something you would do up front. You would do that alongside your airport layout plan and potentially even as part of your site selection. So all those things can kind of be done simultaneously on simultaneous tracks. We don't need to wait to the very end to do that. Likewise, with some of the airport development, you have to do a certain amount of design in order to get an airport layout plan. So you're going to do some of the design early on for the airport layout plan. Final design obviously would be after your site selection is done and your environmental assessment. But these things all kind of move forward together as a group, not individually the way they're kind of shown on that page there. Next, we'll talk just a minute about the NEPIAS. As I said earlier, the NEPIAS is an FAA designation that allows you to receive federal grants. So unless you're part of the FAA's NEPIAS, then you can't get federal money. And typically nobody wants to build an airport without federal money because they tend to pay for most of it. So in order to be included in the NEPIAS, there's some screening requirements. Obviously, you have to build or design to FAA standards. You have to agree to what they call their sponsorship requirements, which there are a number of those that, again, deal with how you protect the land around the airport, the airspace, and that type of thing. And then they do have specific requirements for that airport layout plan that I mentioned a few minutes ago. And those are all things that a lot of it has already been done for you in that Georgia State Aviation System Plan. But certainly the airport layout plan and some of that has to be finalized as you finalize the site selection, because it will be specific to the site that you're looking at. Next, the section on management and operational analysis. I mentioned just a minute ago that this is not really particularly a time-sensitive section. And what I mean by that is the management of the airport could either be by a county department or by an airport authority. And that can be done anytime between now and the time the airport opens. Could even be done, for that matter, after the airport opens. There have been plenty of airports around the state and around the country who have implemented airport authorities 5, 10, 15, 20 years after the airport was in operation. So it's not something that if you make a decision that you need to make a decision today, or even if you did, it's not something that you couldn't come back and revisit at a later time if you determined that one method would work better for you than the other. Also on the daily management, you'll see we have county staff, airport authority staff, and contracted private entity. Obviously, the county staff would apply if the airport was being managed by a county department. The airport authority staff would apply if it's being managed by an airport authority. But that private entity actually could be either. So regardless of whether you decided you were going to have the county manage the airport or an airport authority manage it, either way, there's still an option there to have it managed by a private entity if that's something that was of interest, and that's something we can explore as we move forward with the development of the airport. Now we're getting into the last section, which, as I said, is really the meat and potatoes of the entire thing. And the first part of the financial plan analysis has to do with the planning elements that still remain to be done. As I've already mentioned, some of the planning has been taken care of by the state. There have been a couple of site selection studies done already, so obviously there's a certain amount of planning that has been done. We do need to revisit that. Some of those sites that weren't looked at previously or that were discarded previously for reasons that no longer apply should be looked at again. So it's been 5+ years since the last time it was looked at. So even if nothing had changed, we would probably want to take another look at it anyway, just to make sure there weren't things that are in place now that would prohibit some of the sites and vice versa. So updating that site selection study is an early on task that should be completed in the near term. The airport layout plan, I've mentioned that a couple of times already. I can't go into the environmental assessment without a generic airport layout plan. That is something that we'll have to have in place in order to get into the environmental assessment. But again, it's those things can move forward simultaneously. So in other words, you don't have to have the airport layout plan done. You just have to have a certain amount of it started when you get into the environmental assessment. So again, we can run simultaneous tracks on those things. There we go. So the environmental assessment. The environmental assessment is a NEPA document, so that is a national document. That whole list of stuff over to the right-hand side there, that's all the federal statutes and the federal requirements that apply to an environmental assessment, a NEPA document. So I'm not going to go into the detail. That's not the point of putting it up there. The point of putting it up there is to let you know that the environmental assessment is a significant amount of work. It's a large undertaking. It requires everything from looking at birds and bunnies, as we call it, to looking at wetlands and other endangered species of both plants and animals, to looking at historic artifacts. There's a lot that goes into that. It's typically probably a 9 to 12 month effort. Sometimes can be done a little quicker. Sometimes takes a little longer. That depends on the site and what you find when you start looking into these different aspects of the site. So the NEPA document is probably, I would say, it's probably the biggest hurdle at this point to getting a cleared site. We know that there are some other things out there, such as some height restrictions on some towers and some things like that were looked at in the previous study. But for the most part, those things can be mitigated. So if we can get through the environmental fairly clean, then I have a very, very high level of confidence that there won't be any other issues after that would prevent you from being able to construct on the site that you would like to move forward with. Got to hold your tongue just right with this thing. Moving on to the Airport Capital Improvement Plan. So the Airport Capital Improvement Plan, we refer to it as an ACIP, and that's what FAA refers to it. State DOT refers to it as ACIP. That includes all of the physical components of the airport. So it's everything from the land acquisition through construction of runways, taxiways, aprons, terminals, fuel systems, everything that you got to have in order to operate an airport. So pretty much everything from A to Z in terms of if it's got to be built, if it's got to be constructed, it's part of the ACIP. You can see that Excel spreadsheet that's plopped into the right there, that breaks out all those costs. It breaks them out hypothetically on years based on a proposed starting date and in a order that would be a logical construction order for the opening of the airport. You can see it's broken out by federal, state, and local costs. All of you are aware that the state does some matching of federal grants, which is a very good thing. But of course, obviously, at the end of the day, there will be some local component that you'll have to figure out how to fund, and we'll talk about that in just a second. Next, the financial resource evaluation. So this is the section where we talked about that funding piece. So there are certainly some straightforward options to funding the local portion, and that would be, you know, simply budgeting it in your budget, in the county budget. But that also might be cost prohibitive. So there are other options that exist as well. There's the geo bond option, which could spread that cost out over a longer period of time. So instead of paying for it in, you know, say a 3 to 5 year time frame, you could spread that out over a 20 to a 30-year time frame. There is the SPLOST. I know your SPLOST is coming up for renewal, I think in 2025, if I remember correctly, somewhere around there. And then there is the T-SPLOST, which is similar to a SPLOST, except it deals only with transportation projects only, doesn't include the other county facilities and things that you normally find in a SPLOST. So those are some options that are available to you. Down below that, we have additional funding opportunities, and those are other grant opportunities that exist outside of the FAA and the Georgia DOT Aviation Fund. So there are certainly other federal and state entities that have grants that you could pursue. There's economic development grants. There's DCA has community grants. You've got Tiger grants. You've got there's a whole host of them. We could spend the next 30 minutes naming off all the different grant opportunities. There's also state and federal budget earmarks, which are potential as well. I know when we constructed the airport up in Paulding County back in the early 2000s, we had both state and federal earmarks for that airport. So they're not used quite as often these days as they were back then, but they do still exist, and we do still have the opportunity to pursue those. And we are out of slides. Let's see. So basically, in summary, I don't know why we don't have a summary slide, but in summary, this study was requested by GDOT as part of the planning effort for the airport. It is pretty comprehensive. It does not answer every question that's going to be needed to be answered in terms of the financial commitment for you guys moving forward, but it certainly answers a lot of the questions. And you know, I would urge you to, if you haven't had a chance to take a look at the full report, I'd urge you to spend a little bit of time reading through it. It's not too long. It's not too difficult to get through, but we are a resource for you in terms of answering questions, in terms of doing research, in terms of reaching out to both state and federal agencies, and in terms of negotiating perhaps with the state and FAA on your behalf for some of these grants and other things. So I would hope that you would feel comfortable with reaching out to me at any time that you have questions, whether it's tonight or any other time regarding this effort. So be glad to answer any questions now if you have some.
Yeah, so I have a lot of questions at the moment. You know, we've been looking at this for at least 5 years. You know, COVID, you know, kicked the can down the road a couple times. We extended it. The DOT's worked with us, you know, graciously on this several times. Pull the trigger at that point. You know, we're getting to that point now where we gotta get her go.
Yep.
And so obviously, you know, we're familiar with the EIS process and some of the other processes. A little experience there. At this point right now, we're going to focus on the site selection. I think is the first thing's got to happen. You know, and then once we've got a site selection that we can all agree on, then all the plans and as you talked about earlier, the NEPA, all that stuff, and devious.
Mhm.
And of course, during this whole process, I'm assuming even at this level, we can start looking at all grant opportunities. So obviously, the entire grant matter.
Yep.
Working with you.
Mhm.
So, great job for us, the year. But anyway, she would be something that obviously we coordinate this with.
Mhm.
This is, something that's kind of floundered around. It's all part of our development, economic development.
Yep.
So with that being said, right now, I don't really have a lot of questions. We've met on this and talked about this more than one occasion. And I think the critical thing right now, there are not many sites that I like. Most of the ones that we've all looked at before, so.
Right.
A lot of issues, like you said, when we look at, some of the top sites that we looked at before, any new sites or whatever, and we'll move forward from there. And once we've all agreed, on the site, then I think we can, get much deeper into the meat and potatoes, how we move forward with this
Mhm.
funding over, the logistics. So this is not going to be something that's impacting funding in the next 2 years.
Right.
This is, this is going to spend a year through the devious process,
Mhm.
at least. So, got plenty of time.
Yep.
To incorporate alternative funding, additional funding, grant monies and whatever. So let's see, the guys have any questions for you. We'll just kind of, we'll find us a site sooner than later and kick this party off with you.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, sir. All right. There you are. Yes, Nancy's.
Good evening,
Say-
Chairman and Commissioners.
Cut Miller's rate by 4 mils this year, but everything got planned, is that right?
That's not the plan, but there is no planned increase in this balanced budget. So what I'm presenting is the proposed budget for fiscal year '23. You all have a proposed budget book. This will also be posted on the website tomorrow, and we have a hard copy here in the building and finance in case the public wants to come in and view a hard copy rather than what's on the website. So I just wanted to go over that. The budget process actually started in early March, although the budget process really goes on throughout the whole year. Officially for fiscal year '23, it started in March. Departments submitted their budget request to us. We had a budget committee. We've had 3 work sessions so far in the last 2 to 3 weeks. And tonight we're presenting the proposed budget. On Thursday, the advertisement will run in the Tribune Georgian with the budget listed. And next Thursday, June 16th, will be a public hearing, and we're scheduled for adoption on June 23rd. So I'll start off with the general fund budget, and the balanced budget for this year is 39.5 million. And that's an 8.6% increase from the current fiscal year '22 budget, which is an increase of just over $3.1 million. And this is just a summary of the major classifications. You can see the top part is revenues. And the biggest jump in revenues is ad valorem tax and also sales tax that's lumped in with that, taxes, penalties, and interest. That's 2.5 million. And also, this is a balanced budget using fund balance of 494,000, which is an increase from the current year of 408. And I just want to add, we have a budgeted line of 86 million for the current year fund balance. That was really a placeholder. I don't project that we would use any fund balance this year, but it was part of the budget. So that would, of course, raise the revenues to 3.1 million from prior fiscal year. And of course, on the expenditure side, the largest increase can be found in salaries and benefits as a result of the salary survey and also new positions. And that is just over $3.4 million in an increase. This looks at the salaries in a little bit more detail. The first column is just, this is all increases from the current budget. So the first line is the salaries are increasing by 2.8 million or almost 2.9 million. And again, that's the salary survey and new positions. And then just the budgeted increases on each of how that affects, Social Security, overtime, retirement. Those are all percentages of salaries. So the total impact on the budget is 3.5 million. And there's a summary there listing the new positions, which were discussed, I believe, 2 weeks ago at a work session. And we have a benefits and wellness specialist going from part-time to full-time, election technician going part-time to full-time, a new building inspector plan reviewer. And for the sheriff's office, we have 2 new investigators, 1 school resource officer, 2 Marine Patrol, and 10 jailers. And in the increase in the budget, that includes that $715,000 total. Of course, that's built into the budget. And this chart just shows we have employees in, I think, 6 different funds. And this just shows how I apologize, it's not showing up on the screen, although you should have it in the PowerPoint that's in front of you, the actual figures. So the general fund increase is 2.8 million. And this is just base salaries. I didn't want to really skew it with retirement and FICA and uniforms because that's all considered benefits. So I just stuck with the base salary. So it's 2.8 in the general fund, and then all the other funds, of course, are much smaller. So their impact, I'll just read it out to you. Solid waste is 159,000, which is a 4.8% increase. Unincorporated fire is a $70,409 increase, which is a 2% increase. ARPA is 74,497, a 2% increase. And what that's actually, there's no budgeted salary in the current fiscal year for the ARPA manager. That's why it's just showing such a large increase in dollar amount. 911, $65,000 increase, which is 2% of all the salary increases, and curbside 18,000, which is 0.55% of all the salary increases. But of course, the general fund does carry the largest load of 2.8%, or 2.8 million. And this breaks down just the general fund portion of those base salaries. And you can see that public safety has the majority of the increases at 75% or almost 2.2 million. And then the other classifications within the general fund, general government, 13.7%, judiciary, 7%, 3.74%, planning, 3.99%. And I would also add, that's showing a larger number as well because we consolidated 2 departments, CRS erosion and also code enforcement has been consolidated into the planning and development office. Leisure services has a small increase of 8,000, which is 0.3%, and public works 86,000, 3.02%. And then I have no idea what happened with my charts. I apologize for that. When I went through them earlier, things were there. So, but in your packet that you have a copy of this, and we will post this online as well. And I'll make sure that the figures are showing up where they're supposed to be. So my apologies for that. This breaks down public safety, and the sheriff's office, jail, SROs, and 911 make up 1.6 million or 73% of the base salaries.
This is blue, just talk about the color.
Yeah, sorry, that's the blue. The green is EMS and fire, and that is almost $600,000 and 26%. And then the small items are animal control and EMA, which are both under 1% of that total 2.27 million. And again, my apologies on that chart. These are the general fund. This was discussed at a work session, just the major changes to the general fund. And it's a methodology report, and the general fund will pay $66,000 for that. And it'll also be funded by $20,000 from impact fees. GIS enterprise software is $30,000, but it's being offset by a reduction in CRC contract costs of $48,000.
We're bringing it house.
Correct, yes. The district attorney requested an increase of operating costs of $48,000. There was an additional increase or a request for an additional personnel, and that was not included in the proposed budget. The capital improvement funding of $400,000. Election poll workers, we increased that by $30,000. Bad debt expense, I did have it budgeted at $400,000, and I'm increasing it a little bit this year just due to the trend that we've been experiencing. Insurance costs went up about $64,000. In fuel, that's not really a big number, $39,000. However, about 3 months ago, I did a pretty significant adjustment to the fuel budgets. So all this is telling us, yeah, February or March, and it was a total of about $350,000 across all the funds. So what this is just the increase. So it's not certainly not the total budget. It's just the increase over the current fiscal year.
42 budget.
Correct.
I know that was 350 plus the 38. I'm looking at almost $400,000.
Adjustment. That's just the adjustment. Correct. Correct.
42.
And if you go in your budget book and when it's posted online, you could see the actual detail of the fuel lines in each of the departments, if anyone's interested in that.
It's a little skewed when we do a budget every year because
Correct.
February, March realized that.
The costs have gone up so much. Right.
We all live it every day.
The next fund that I'm talking about is the curbside collections, and it has budgeted revenues and expense of $1.4 million. This is a pretty significant increase over the current budget, almost 30%. And that's due to a new contract with Meridian Waste. So in the revenues, we also had a scheduled rate increase for customers, and that should be about $183,000 additional revenue. And also we're allocating again this year some insurance premium tax from the unincorporated tax service district. And we're allocating $291,000, which is an increase from the current year's allocation of $58,000. The expenses, of course, there was an increase in salary and benefits due to the salary survey and an increase of cost. The 367 is the increase, is not the total cost of trash collections. So what I'm trying to highlight are the differences. The next fund is the 911 fund. And it's got revenues and expenses of $1.7 million, and that's about a 14% increase over the current year. The highlighted changes are we're doing a transfer in from the general fund, which we always do, but it's $272,000, which is a $144,000 increase from the current year. And we're also scheduled to use fund balance, which we typically do, and that's an increase of $58,000 on 911. And the expenses, the biggest impact is the salary and benefit increases. That's not all salary survey. They did budget for a significant increase in overtime just due to the staffing problems that they do have. So people have to cover the shifts.
But that could also change.
That's the goal. The goal is to,
Fully staffed and eliminate some of that overtime.
correct. Yes, sir. The next fund is the unincorporated service district with revenues and expenses of $3.6 million. The highlights for this fund is revenues from the insurance premium tax is $1,029,000. And of course, we've allocated that $291,000 out of this fund over to curbside, which is an eligible use of the insurance premium tax. And we're also scheduled and budgeting for use of fund balance of $970,000. The expenses from increases in salary of $86,000, and that does include a new position, a fire safety specialist of we're budgeting $55,000, that's salary and benefits. It's not included with the other list of new positions because this is a totally different fund. It would be totally funded by the unincorporated service district. Correct, correct. And also PSA, they gave me an estimated budget for the upcoming year. They do not run in the same budget cycle we do. So we're estimating an increase of about $26,000 for PSA recreation. And it is such a big increase in this budget of 34%, mostly due to the scheduled and budgeted capital equipment, which is listed on the bottom. The next fund is the Solid Waste Authority, and that actually has a reduction from fiscal year 22, not because we expect lower sales or income from it. It's just that we have less capital expenditures this year. So it always has to be a balanced budget. But we are expecting site sales to increase due to a rate increase, and we are expecting to use fund balance of about $1.6 million. And the expenses, there is an increase due to the salary survey and a reduction in the capital outlay from the prior year. The next fund is, yes, that was $1 million for the compactor. So there were other capital items budgeted in fiscal year 22, but when you compare them to the new budget, it looks like it's a reduction. But it's not a reduction in operating expenses, only capital expenditures. Yeah. The next fund is the Two Rivers Gun Range, and we're showing a reduction in costs of almost 13% with revenues and expenses at $300,000. And this is really just an adjustment because it just opened and we're trying to get a feel for where and how the revenues are going to ramp up. Pardon?
So we don't really have enough handle
No.
down on that.
We're working on it, correct.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
And the salary and benefits, there was an impact from the salary survey, but when we adjusted other salaries, it actually ended up being a net decrease to salaries and benefits. And the next fund is the capital expenditures fund. And this is what we had a work session on last week when this was discussed. And the list that's there that totals $650,000 was what was the agreed upon to put in the proposed budget. And we're expecting to use about $250,000 in fund balance. And we're going to be funding it with the $400,000. The next fund is SPLOST 8. And we're expecting revenues of 15 million and expenses budgeted of 15 million. It's such a large increase, 54%, mostly because it's really twofold. Sales taxes, collections have increased significantly, and you can see that that's 2.8 million. But we also have the health facility, which is a SPLOST project. It's a level 2 SPLOST project. We also have CDBG funding for it, and we also have the cities and the county making contributions for that building. Because it is a level 2 project, the entire thing has to be run through SPLOST 8. So therefore, what we're budgeting for additional grant revenue and contributions from the cities, the health department, and the county of 2.6 million. So it is a pretty big increase, but not all of it is sales tax. And then, of course, the distributions to the cities, we're projecting at 1.8 million. And the projects listed are what we discussed at the work session last week. This is a list of projects that were also discussed at the work session last week for ARPA. And the total amount for fiscal year 23 is almost 6.4 million. I could go through each one, but building improvements are 1.7 million, vehicles of 1.9 million, computers, software, hardware, 470,000, radios of 1 million, other equipment, 697,000, and then just miscellaneous of 507,000, which totaled the almost $4 million. And this is just a summary of what's been spent on ARPA, and Eric did cover this at last week's work session. We've spent $917,000 to date. Our fiscal year budget is almost 4 million. And then we're projecting some of the costs to hit in future fiscal years. And I just wanted to show that, like the radios, I'm just budgeting half the cost for fiscal year 23 and the other half would hit in fiscal year 24. So that's all that's doing is just moving the cost where we're expecting it to be. So,
That money is not required to be spent until 26, is it?
correct, correct.
Yes.
Yes. And after that, we still have a remaining balance of almost $900,000, which could be discussed for, future projects. And this last slide is, I know that there was quite a bit of capital equipment that was discussed for purchases or leases for the sheriff's office. So this is just a list of what the sheriff's office is being funded for fiscal year 23 and going forward. So it does not have anything to do with normal operating costs. This is all above and beyond in the sense of.
It's outside the normal budget.
It's outside the normal. There's some that's part of the operating is just the increases to the salaries and benefits. The new positions, of course, that's part of operating, but it's all new costs for fiscal year 23.
The $10 million is not part of their annual every year.
Correct.
The rest is just capital.
Capital expenditures, correct. And that totals almost $6 million. And what's not included in that are, I know out of ARPA, we had the county thank you awards, but that was county-wide, but I did not include that. The wellness holiday, which was also county-wide, and the first responders grant where everyone received, the certified officers received $1,000 each.
Did it also include?
The first responders grant was paid to the certified officers, jailers, paramedics, EMTs, firefighters. And that's all I've got.
All right. Well, thank you, Ms. Nancy. Next time we pick up some of the time cards.
Yeah, that will be corrected before it's posted tomorrow. So I'll be sure of that. Yeah.
You guys have any questions? Yeah.
You're welcome.
This is really the first time we've had an opportunity to kind of together work sessions, discussions, and, like a chance to we can all kind of dig in a little deeper on this now.
Yes.
And maybe have some questions and video the next time. All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. This brings us to our first public comment section. Is there anybody registered?
I do, Mr. Timothy Bestman.
The commission. Want to talk about the proposed budget and the use of the ARPA funds. I do have a copy of the final rule, the overview of the final rule as it relates to the ARPA funds. Want to notice something on the final rule. The state replacing lost public sector revenue. Final rule offers a standard allowance for revenue loss of up to 10 million. Allowing recipients to select between the standard amount of revenue loss or complete a full revenue loss calculation. Recipients that select the standard allowance may use that amount in many cases, the full reward for government service with streamlined reporting and requirements. So at this point, we believe that because there was no revenue loss within the county, according to the budgets that have been presented, and the use of these ARPA funds, we think you are violating what the treasurer has sent down. I sat in a meeting last week for almost 3 hours talking about the budget, about the use of ARPA funds. I was amazed that $10 million that was given to this county did not address a lot of the needs
of the people in this county that have been affected by the pandemic. I spoke with Mr. Eric briefly after the meeting on Thursday and shared my heart and the concerns of some of the citizens in Camden County. And his comment to me was, I work at the discretion of the county commissioners. Afterward, I spoke to Mr. Landy Brown outside and told him about my concerns and the community concerns about the way that the county is spending the ARPA funds. Mr. Brent replied to me was, that's why we hired Eric. He should be the one looking to see the best use of these funds. We sent a memorandum to all of the cities here in our county and also to the county commissioners. When I say we, I'm talking about the NAACP of Camden County, where I serve as the president. We offer several suggestions in ways that we believe that the community will benefit from the use of these ARPA funds. You know, when we look at people that have been affected by the pandemic, I believe, like I shared with Mr. Delaney, that I believe it was a missed opportunity for the county commissioners to really show this county just how much they're concerned about the people in this county as it relates to offering services in the county with the use of the $10 million ARPA funds. There was over 400 convictions during a period of time in Camden County. 400 people, because of, a lot of it, because of the pandemic, was displaced. There was nothing in this proposal, nothing in this proposal that suggested that we're going to show some kind of compassion and we're going to help the citizens of Camden County. $10 million. But we got a long suggestion of proposals from department heads. We filed an open record request asking for the need assessment that's supposed to have been done. We didn't get a need assessment. We got from Ms. Katie Bishop a proposal from different departments about how they feel that they should use ARPA funds. Monies that's supposed to be benefiting people of this community to help them survive and get back to some type of normalcy in their lives. So I question the direction of where these ARPA funds are going. There should have, according to the executive order, there should have been community input on determining the best uses of these ARPA funds. There should have been a need assessment. Mr. Eric told me that there was no need assessment that he knew of. There was no community input. I think the community should be involved, or you should at least hear what the community has to say. Everybody is not as fortunate as some of you sitting there. Everybody's not as fortunate as myself. There are people that are still struggling from day to day. So there was some suggestions that we offered to our county commissioners. One, conduct a need assessment. That was not done. Two, support mental health treatment and provide relief of those that are experiencing homelessness. That was not done. Another thing that we suggested, help households apply for rental relief. I didn't see any of that when we're talking about ARPA funds. 400 and some people evicted in Camden County. And we can't think enough to have enough compassion to say, hey, let's use some of this money because they was affected by the pandemic and help some of these people out. 4, invest in broadband infrastructure. That wasn't done. And the youth of our county. I talk to youth all the time. And one of the first things that seniors say when they get ready to graduate, what are your plans? To get out of Camden County. To get out of Camden County. Some of these funds could have been used for youth enrichment, youth enhancement during the summer. We have a program down at the PSA summer camp where a child has to pay $100 a week. Imagine a family of 4 having to pay $100 a week just so their child can attend a summer camp. We don't have a why in this area, anything to help our youth be enhanced in this area. Summer meals program. Anything about none of that. So, in my conclusion, as you look at this budget and as you vote on tractors and equipment, have some compassion in your heart and say we want to help the citizens of Camden County. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, sir.
Mr. Moe, I know you said on here that you had some questions. We don't normally have a back and forth, but if you want to go ahead and ask your questions when Mr. Yakabachi gets up, he may can answer them. Yep.
My name is Ray Moe. I live at 252 Foxville Circle. Property adjoining the proposed residential or zoning request from Mr. Bruce and his wife Barbara. The time to address these things, I guess, was at the meeting in May, where all this was supposed to come up and be discussed. Unfortunately, I could not make that meeting, so I was hoping to have the time to kind of clear that up now. My questions are, what is the change from agricultural residential to